My memory, I know for sure, is back to age 3, because I am 3 years older than my sister, and I remember her birth. I remember living above a store in a one room. Also, I remember just around the corner there were the outhouses. And down the hill was a cathedral. I remember being in a wedding, my mother putting makeup on me for the first time and walking through this cathedral. I just remember the hardwood floors with the sun kind of glaring down on it. But I don't remember much else, just that and doing the petals, throwing the petals out of my basket as a flower girl. I remember I had an aunt. She lived in the city, and I do remember one of the visits, she was entertaining a black soldier, and there was things that I saw that a little girl shouldn't have seen. But I have so many memories. Also going on the military base with a soldier. I don't know if it was my father or just a friend, but hearing the horns, is it the horns? When the flag is at half. I remember the sound of that and going into the cafeteria and getting strawberry shake or malt. And it was so wonderful, very frothy, sweet. And I remember getting Mars candy bar, and that was like my favorite. And let's see, I have so many memories. I do remember when I would go out of our apartment, or whatever you want to call it, the room above the store, there was hills, and off into the distance I could see more hills. And that's a little haunting to me because I've had dreams where I've been back there, and it was so vivid and so clear. And that's one of my things, if I go back to Korea, just to see where I lived and see if it looks similar to my memory. I don't really have any desire to find family. I just want to make my memories real, make them more high def in my head. My memories, they're starting to fade, get a little foggy in my head. They're still there. And I just wish I can just fine tune them, sharpen them up in my head. As I said, like high definition. I remember vividly the morning when my mother gave us up. My teacher, well, this white gentleman, came to pick me up for school. I don't know if he's white, but this gentleman, she told him I wasn't going to school, and we had these pastries, which we never got. You know, that was like a real treat. And she was crying and crying and crying. And my next memory is me and my sister, we were on a dirt road. I can see like maybe a convent on one side, because I could see nuns going in and out, and shanties on the other side, little homes. And then my next memory is sitting in the back seat of a car, sitting low. I can't really see anything, but I can see the passing lights, city lights. It was dark. I remember being in 2 orphanages, which a lot of that memory didn't make sense to me until I got older. I was in City Orphanage, and one of the times another orphan and myself was carrying a big black kettle, boiling water, and we dropped it and it splashed on my leg. And I remember having looked like a big, huge boil where the skin is all puffy. And I remember them putting some sort of substance on it, like ink. It's like real dark blue substance, and they bandaged it. And one memory I have, and I don't know where to place it, I remember seeing the silkworm beds, vividly. And I don't remember if I saw that in the orphanage or after I was adopted, because my adoptive family lived in Japan. So I went to World Vision, and I remember the buildings. They were brick buildings on a hillside. And at the very top of the hill was a brick home. And I remember it was the family's son's birthday. It was a white family that lived there. And I remember going to the house, and they had a toilet, and I kept flushing it. I thought that was really neat. And I remember them giving me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I thought that was just so good and delicious. Because I remember all we ate at the orphanage, well, I don't know if that's all we ate, but all I remember is the mush. It's like like cornmeal stuff, porridge. I remember eating that, and I remember the room that I slept in. It was a long room with concrete floors and windows that went all the way across. And I remember the windows because at night when I'm sleeping, laying there, I could see the windows dance across the room as, I guess, car lights hit it. And I also remember that it must have been really cold. I don't remember being cold, but I remember how we would warm our hands. They were these big coal tubular things with holes, and you could see the fire at the bottom. And we would rub our hands on that. And also the playground, it was a swing set. And I remember there was a time there was so many caterpillars everywhere, the big brown hairy caterpillars, and I was scared of those. And I remember when my adoptive family came to visit with me. My sister and I stayed with them a few days. And when I got back to the orphanage, I was so excited about the 2 words that I learned. And it was outside and sidewalk. I still remember that. I don't know why I thought those words were so neat, but outside and sidewalk I thought were really neat words. And they came back and adopted me. And I remember being in the small plane going from Korea to Japan to live with my family. I had an older brother. He was 14 at the time. And my mother, I guess she was pregnant because shortly afterwards she gave birth to my youngest brother. But adjusting, I remember I guess I was dewormed, and I'm in the bathroom, and I was passing a disgusting tapeworm, and I screamed, and my brother, my 14-year-old brother, came in there and helped me out, pulled it out. You know, that was big of him at that age, you know. My parents, they did their best. However, adoption was never spoke about or brought up. If anyone asked, my mother would say, you tell them to ask your mother. So the message I got from that was some big, deep, dark secret to be ashamed of. But I knew I was adopted because I had so much memory up to that point. Also, I remember crying myself to sleep every night, crying for my mother. Nobody knew that because I never talked about her. In fact, I never spoke of her till my adulthood. I just kept the memories in my head. My life turned for the worse when I was 12. I was supposed to be saved, because that's what Pentecostals believe, that you should be saved. And when you're saved, you're supposed to act accordingly. So when someone told my mother that I was not saved, she in turn told me, you're going to act it. And that was so crazy to me. But so in junior high, I would sneak and wear makeup. We weren't supposed to. And that era, micro mini skirts were in style. And growing up in California, everybody wore the hot pants and the micro. And my mother made me wear these long skirts down to my knees. And I would change my clothes every day. I was late to school every day. I would walk to my friend's house and do the change. And we were late for school every day. But it had to be done because I felt like I was different as is without adding to dressing in that manner. I felt like I already stuck out enough, not looking like the product of my mother and father, and then to wear these hideous dresses down to my knees. I just, I fought that. But my mother caught me a few times. In fact, one day in gym, I reached in my bag to put on mascara, and there was masking tape wrapped around it saying, "God sees you." That just freaked me out. Oh. Then, my mother was a evangelist, and she would run revivals. And one of the times she was away, we had what we call a den, the family room where you watch TV. And I was awakened by a little pain, and it was my father molesting me. And I didn't know what to do. I just acted like I was still asleep, turn my body, squirm my body. So he stopped. I told my best friend. She told her mother. Her mother told my mother. My mother took us for a ride and confronted my father, and of course he denied it. She took me to the hospital on base, and I remember being frightened. And I guess she was checking to see if I was still a virgin. I don't know what it was, but the doctor sensed something and asked me, was everything okay? And of course I told him it was. But from that point forward, my life was hell, living at home, because my mother, she took everything out on me, like she resented me. I remember when I was still 12, I used to cook the family dinner, and this is after the molestation. My mother was running a revival, and she told me to fry chicken for dinner. And when my father got home, he said he didn't want fried chicken. He wanted pork and beans and wieners, so that's what I fixed. That morning, my mother pulled me out of bed, yanked me out of bed, was ripping my PJs and beating me with this high heel. I still have a scar on my knee from, she sent me to school with my knee bleeding. But that's the kind of things I was subjected to. However, I had told my adoptive younger brother, who's the only product of my adoptive father, it was hard for him to accept, and he said that it seemed like I lived in a different household than the rest of them. Because his experience, my younger sister's experience, everybody else's experience was totally different from mine. I confronted my mother about that, my adopted mother. We never talked about what happened. About 5 years ago, I called her. We were never really close. I called her, and she asked me, why haven't you called before now? I said, I'm calling you now. She said, no, why haven't you called me? I said, I'm calling you now. And then I said, you don't know what's going on in my life. And she said, you don't know what's going on in mine. And with that, I just let her have it. I told her, you were there for me. Your husband molested me. I started and she started saying, you're lying, you're lying, you're lying, you're lying, and I just hung up. And then she repeatedly called me, left all these messages, and one of these messages, she was very sarcastic. She said, you were the perfect daughter. You rescued us. We didn't rescue you. You rescued us. But it was in, sarcastic manner. But, and then she was calling my sister, and my sister said that my mother felt like I was too damaged when they adopted me. Like, I asked for that. But that really bothered me. But I'm over that as well, because she's old and she's getting senile. So I'm past that. And I never confronted my father. I thought I would on his deathbed, but I didn't. I forgave him years prior because I would read up on so much, uh, about incest. And from the stories I read, I felt I was fortunate because it was a single incident and it was not, actual sex. He just was touching me down there. So I forgave him because it was a single incident, and that the flesh is weak is what, we were taught growing up. So fast forward, we moved, that was in California. We moved to Illinois and started going to this church there. And then the pastor there was coming on to me all the time. So that was an ordeal. But my mother married me off. I always say she married me off. There was a saxophone player at our church. He was 28. I was 18. He was interested in me, so he started coming over our house every day for a month, and my mother sat him down and asked him his intentions. And his intentions was to marry me, so she tells me that I'm engaged and I can't see this other guy that I was crazy about. So I was married in 6 months' time. My parents moved back to California, and I was there, left alone in Illinois, married. And I stayed married for 15 years. I had a son. Got divorced when he was 10. And, there was a lot of guilt behind that, a lot of guilt. But my son and I, our relationship is much better now. He moved to New York 6 years ago. He has a better understanding of me now. Because there was so much guilt. But it was easy for me to just go ahead and get married and live that life because of the way I was raised in such a strict environment where I wasn't allowed to really voice my feelings or my thoughts. So it was easy for me to just do the married life. I want to say that people, since I joined the adoptive community, I hear all these stories, some that found their biological family. I don't have a desire anymore. I came to the conclusion that my mother's deceased, and I'm okay with that. It is kind of hard for me to get real happy for other people that found their family. I don't know if that's selfish of me, but it's hard for me to just like, oh, well, great, I go through the motion. And also, it's harder for me to relate to the younger generation Korean adoptees because I feel, especially the ones that are mixed, a lot of them were adopted by, look like decent white families. I don't know. I'm sure there's horror stories, here and there, but I see them complaining, and I'm looking at it like, my God, they tried to expose you to Korean culture. They're supported you in your search, and you're still complaining. I don't get that because I didn't get any support from my family. In fact, if it wasn't for my father, my adopted father, he did give me my papers. If it was up to my mother, I would have never seen her, but he gave them to me. And reading over the social studies from World Vision, it made a lot of my memories make sense, like why that I was in, it validated that I was actually in 2 orphanages. It says that children that come to World Vision, that particular one, were sick. So I don't know if I was sick or my sister. But on my social study papers, it said that I had big eyes and kinky hair, and my Korean heritage was barely discernible. And I remember when I was adopted, I felt like I belonged because I was same color as my adopted mother. So I felt a connection living in Japan. But when we moved to California, then I was made aware, you Chinese. Chink, the little kids would taunt me. And it was always the black kids. They would do their eyes and make fun of my eyes. But living in Japan with my adopted family, I felt like I belonged because I was the same color as them. But moving to the States, everything changed. Even when I was married, an adult, I would not look at other Asians because I felt something deep inside me felt that they looked at me as being dirty. And it's funny, now that I'm in the CAG communities and some of the stories I've read about, they feel like you have dirt on your skin or you are dirty. So it's kind of odd that I sensed that. And I never thought that Asian men, Korean men, found me attractive because I'm mixed. So whenever my husband would see Koreans or Asian, he would make it a point to speak to them, and I would get so mad at him. But after my divorce, I remember going to a boutique in St. Louis, and it was Korean owned. And it happened to be Mother's Day, and they asked me about my mother, and I said I was adopted, and they're like, was feeling so bad for me. And I didn't want I didn't want to go into any more with them, because I was not ready. I met another Korean woman in my late 30s. She worked at a beauty supply place, and she wanted to help me. She said she could send my picture and have it printed, and I never took a step to do anything. The most I ever did was online. I did some searches, but I guess I just kind of knew that my mother was deceased. But I never ate Korean food until recently. I mean, my whole point of reference is black. My whole experience is black. So it's kind of weird in a way that I have all these memories in Korea, but yet my whole point of view, perspective, reference is black. Now I embrace the fact that I'm Korean and black. For a while I said I'm black. When people would ask me, what are I black? Well, what are you mixed with? Then I would say Korean. Now when people ask or curious, I just go ahead and say I'm Korean and black. I say Korean first and then black second. So I've, and thank God for Facebook. That's really opened my eyes and taught me a lot through the adoptee community. And there's one particular adoptee that has made some of my memories make sense. Because I remember eating some sort of, I always thought it was like dried tree bark. It was a big burlap bag, like in a closet in our one room over the store. And I remember eating that, and it was chewy and dry and like a tree bark. And I had mentioned that, and this gentleman told me that it probably was dried fish. And that makes sense. Because all these years, it's like, was it tree bark? But that's what we had in our closet. That was our food. Also, I remember the rubber shoes that looked like a canoe. And someone posted about that. And that, I love it when my memories make sense. I'm happy to be Korean and black and an adoptee, good with the bad. I like saying it when I meet new people, they're always surprised when I say I was born in Korea. That makes me feel like I'm worldly, world traveler. I kind of like the idea that I wasn't born here. I don't know why. I guess somehow it makes me feel a little special. I haven't really tried to speak Korean. Although that was my first language, I completely lost it. I think it is locked in there, and maybe if I go under hypnosis, it might just all unlock. However, I do remember one incident. My adopted father, said caterpillar in Korean, and it rang a bell with me. I recognized the word immediately. I can't remember the word now, but I remember I was about 10 and he said the word and I recognized it right away. I also remember that my name was Jackie Lee. When I was 8, my mother had a picture of this woman, a friend of the family. Her name was Jackie. And she asked me, she said, "Who is this?" I said, "That's me." That was my way of saying she has the same name as myself. And my mother, my adopted mother, started crying. But she never said anything to me about it. But I knew that was my name, Jackie Lee. And it's on my adoption papers. But being in the adoptee groups, someone kind of made fun of it when they asked, "What is your Korean name?" I said, "Jackie Lee." They was like, "That's a made-up name." But I kind of believed them for a second, and then I'm thinking, well, maybe my name really is Jackie Lee. Maybe my birth father was named Jack, and my mother named me Jackie after him. That's what I like to believe, that my father's name was Jack and I was named after him. I have been painting and signing under Jackie Lee recently. I would like to change my name to Jackie Lee. I feel like it has a nice ring. I think I look more like Jackie Lee than Stephanie Blandon. Oh, I'm a grandmother as of Thanksgiving Day. And all these years I was thinking, I don't want to be called grandma. But when the little one was born, I just cried that whole day. And I think I got more emotional with him than my son, because it's like my legacy is continuing going forward. And it just really means so much more than just being a grandma. It's my legacy. And it's a boy, so it will hopefully continue. Once again, I am thankful for all my memories. I was watching a movie recently with Tom Cruise. I forget the name, but it's a futuristic movie. And he had these memories of his life with his wife. And it just really touched me. I cried. And it's because I can relate to him and his memories getting foggy. You cherish them, but they're getting foggy.